Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to the landing.
There's something special about folks from down east. Grit, heart, and a deep love for the water that shapes who they are. Today's guest carries all of that with him, and then some. He is someone who has served our country through the United States Coast Guard, traveling far beyond the shores he calls home, yet never losing that strong down east spirit. One of his stations brought him to Cape Lookout, a place so many of us hold close, and his time there is just one chapter in a life marked by service, leadership, and dedication. He's the kind of leader who never settled for good enough. Getting the job done right mattered, because for him, just getting by was never an option. Beyond the uniform, he's simply a joy to know. Easy to talk to, full of stories, and deeply rooted in where he comes from. He's someone you can't help but appreciate after just one conversation. We are grateful for his service, proud to share in his story, and we know that you will quickly realize that down east is definitely close to his heart. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Landing. We are in for a treat today with a gentleman that, if you've been listening to our Coast Guard series, you have heard his name come up a few times. So we had to meet the man behind all these stories, and today we're going to do just that. So if you will, sir, please tell us your name, who's your crowd, and where you're from.
My name is Henry Styron. That's my given name, but everybody knows me as Farmer. I've had that name since the day I was born. It's a nickname that my sister gave me. I'm from Cedar Island. My family's been there since generations. The earliest they can track back was the early 1700s. My family naturally were commercial fishermen.
I love it. Well, welcome in, and
Thank you.
I cannot wait to get to know you a little bit better and to see the man behind some of these fun stories that we have been hearing. As you know, we have interviewed some guys that you know really well about being stationed at Cape. And so you tell us, this is your time.
Naturally, I grew up on Cedar Island and went to school at Atlantic. At that time, the school in Atlantic was a long brick building. I went in one end of it in the first grade, came out the other end in the 12th grade. After I got out of high school there, I went to school in Charlotte it was a business college. Myself and three other people, it was Richard Hamilton and Julian Gaskell. Graduated from that, I worked for Duke Power Company for, believe it or not, I was a computer person in those years. But this was pre-computers to have nowadays. That was all hard drive and so forth. And I worked there in the computer system for about a year. And Mama called me one day, says, "Farmer, you've got a letter here from Uncle Sam." I said, "Mama, go ahead and open it." And she did, says, "Greetings from your friends and neighbors. You've been drafted in the U.S. Army, and you get to report to Fort Benning, Georgia on a certain date." Well, I said, "Mama, I don't want to go in the Army." Well, Mama's uncle, Connie Daniels from Stacy, and his son-in-law, which I don't remember his name right now, was a recruiter at Fort Macon, the Coast Guard. Mama says, "I'll give him a call." And luckily, he had an opening, or made an opening for me, probably, to go in the Coast Guard. So I enlisted in the Coast Guard in January of 1966, went to boot camp like a normal person does. In those days, they didn't have a buddy system. But there was a fellow from Atlantic, Craig Morris, he also got drafted. So he and I went together, and we went through boot camp together. After boot camp, I was stationed on the Coast Guard cutter Tamarora out of Staten Island, New York, and he was stationed on the Coast Guard cutter Mackinac, which is also out of Staten Island. Now, the Tamarora, if you've ever saw the movie, The Perfect Storm,
Yes.
she was a star into it. She was a star in that, and it was a rescue at high seas and so forth. Well, while I was on the Tamarora, I'd been there about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year. They came a mutual, and you've heard of some always talk about mutuals. That's somebody wants to trade. I want to trade for this, and you want to trade for that station. And there was a boy at the Cape Lookout, and he was from New York, and he didn't like it there naturally. And we mutual. So I went to Cape Lookout, and he went to New York on the Tamarora. Now, I'd already advanced to seaman and taken my exam, my practical factors, that is, for BM3. When I got to Cape Lookout, Eugene Pond was the chief. And there were so many people from Harker's Island. There was, I think I've got a list on here, Wayne Davis, Sylvester Guthrie, Donnie Lewis, Sam Yeomans, Danny Taylor, and others were stationed there.
I know a few of them.
Yes, I'm sure you do. And it was a good time. And Eugene Pond, the chief, he was a good man. Eugene was a little settled in his ways, a little bit different at times, but he was a good person. He said, Styron, I understand that you can type. I said, yes, Chief, a little bit. He says, well, that's good. You're going to go in the office. I said, no, Chief, I'm not going in the office. Well, I didn't realize how stern he could be. He says, I'm not asking if you want to go in the office. I'm telling you you're going to go in the office. I said, Chief, I'm here to learn and run these boats. He said, you're still going to do that. But in your off time, you're going to be in that office.
Oh.
He made me go.
So you did.
Against my will. Truly against my will. Looking back, best thing ever happened to me. Mm-hmm. I had to learn the administrative side of the Coast Guard. Mm-hmm. Controller's manual, personal manual, right? Armory manual, everything I had to learn. Eugene at that time was a ski championship of the Coast Guard. And he'd go in and say, Styron, order me 1,200 rounds of shotgun shells. Coast Guard paid for them. Mm-hmm. Because he represented the Coast Guard, and as your dad probably told you, he'd go out there and we throw clay pigeons for him and so forth and ski. And it was just a good time. We had a lot of experiences at the Cape, and I'm sure everybody's told you about the whale story and so forth. It seemed like every year a whale or more would come up in the bight and run aground, turn around. Well, Eugene told me, says, Styron, you know there's two things about a whale and a sailboat that got in common. I said, what's that, Chief? He said, they got no reverse. When that whale ran aground, he couldn't back up.
Yeah.
Like a sailboat.
Yeah.
So I think it was your dad or a bunch of us anyway, and I know Guy and Willis was there. I was on a small boat with somebody, may have been your dad. We got a line on his tail and pulled him off. That was not a problem. But when he got off in deep water, he wanted to go one way, we want to go the other. And he broke the line. And truly, when he broke, if he hadn't broke the line, I think he would have probably pulled the boat under. Don't know.
Wow.
But, just review
That
these.
had to be a little bit scary.
It was, hey, we're close to land. We just jumped overboard anyway. Okay. Now, about the pine trees being planted over there, that was a Boy Scout project that Eugene Pond volunteered for. That the Coast Guard would help when they could, right? And the Boy Scouts are supposed to stay over there and plant the pines. We were not even involved. But typical Boy Scouts, when they got to Cape Lookout in them sandhills, they scattered like mice. Now, they did plant a lot of pines. You got to give them credit. They planted a lot of pines. But Chief decided we were going to help. We wound up planting most of the pines on Cape Lookout. Now, I don't think we get much credit for it, but we did.
Yeah.
Now, none of us were thrilled about the project.
I bet not.
One of the people who were not thrilled very much was Donnie Lewis. And he hated it. He was madder than the devil. And the pine trees came in bunches, I'd say, well, they're only about that tall, little sapling. I'd say about 100 to a rubber band, if you would.
Oh, wow.
Donnie, he catches up, nobody looking, he planted the whole 100 in one hole. He just wanted to make, and there were boxes and boxes and boxes of them. He just wanted to get rid of them.
So that's where it's really thick. Okay.
Evidently. Like I said, I don't know how much. Okay. Eugene stayed there, I guess, this is a guess, for about a year and a half, 2 years. Eugene, a lot of stories tell about him. He had a dog, a Chesapeake Bay Receiver named Rattler. Rattler was his name. Well, Eugene lived in Beaufort, and he would meet the boat every morning, and he'd come over, and a lot of mornings, he'd have to use the bathroom on the way to Cape Lookout. We would slow the boat down. He'd hang his rear end over the side. He'd do his business. We kept toilet paper on the boat for him, and we'd just go on. And, of course, Rattler was there almost every day. We'd feed him and so forth. in the galley, which is separate from the station, and they're built separate because of fire dangers in the so-called olden days. Long, long table in there. The chief sat at the very front of the table. His first-class engineer sat on one side, the right or left, and the postmates on the other, and has descended down the line. So you can imagine which end of the table myself and the rest of us were on. Your daddy was sitting up above me because he was, I think your dad was already third class or second class done. But before you sat down, you stood by your respective chair. Before you sat down, the chief said the blessing, which I think was really nice. So there's a lot of things. And when Eugene retired, Jack Davis came. Now, Jack was really a good man. He was interested in the crew. And Jack was there for, again, this is, I guess, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. No, I don't think it was quite 2 years. And Jack got killed. He and Sonny Davis, his brother, and I think Clark was with him, and I think Charles Manley was with him, went down, and they had an old Army red painted Jeep. They went down to Davis Hunting Club, and on the way back, they were coming down through what we called the airstrip at the time, and they ran up on the edge of a sand dune. Sand dune weren't very high, maybe 2 or 3 feet high, and Jeep flipped over, broke Jack's neck. And I was at the station. I had the officer of the day, and we found out about it. Lesson Sally called us and said they turned over, and they didn't know what condition Jack was in. Well, fortunately for us, there was a doctor staying at one of their camps.
Oh, wow.
And he went down there, and they had got Jack out by the time that I and my crew got down there. And we gave him mouth-to-mouth and external cardiac massage for probably an hour. But the doctor says it's just too late. So
Wow.
that night, I carried him back over to Harker's Island with a 30-footer.
That was a hard day.
Hard day.
Wow.
Hard day. During this time, well, before you're doing that, you've got to talk about Lesson Sally, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about them.
Tell a little bit. Dad mentioned their store,
Okay.
and said that he loved to go there and listen to them and to hear their stories. So tell us a little bit about them.
Sally was my girlfriend. I say that just jokingly. They called her Barnacle. And I believe Lesson Sally was about, now this is my guess, I'll say they're probably at least 50 years old, maybe even a little bit older. Certainly older than anybody at the station. They had a little tiny store over there, a little marina, if you want to call it. They would sell snacks and beer and so forth. And
Now, where was the store?
it was do you remember the A-frame house?
Yes.
It was between the Coast Guard station and the A-frame house.
Oh, okay.
In that little cove up in there.
Okay.
And they had 2 or 3 camps there and so forth. And Les met Sally. Les was in the Army. He was from Idaho. And he met her over here at Cape Lookout because the Army had a place during World War II, a gun emplacement. And that's where he met her at. And they got married after that. And they came down there. And we would give them rides and so forth and like that. And Sally could do just about anything. So could Les. I mean, he was a tinkerer. He could do just about anything. And in those days, there was a lot of scallops in the wintertime up and down the shoreside. And Sally goes scalloping. And she called me one day. We had an old crank telephone. Says, Styron, I want you to come down and try some of these scallops.
How to twist your arm to do that then.
I said, Sally, I don't have time. I said, got a lot of stuff going on. She said, well, I'll bring you some. Now, how she fixed them, right, was an oddity.
Uh-oh.
She'd take the scallops out of the shell, guts, feathers, and all, grind them up, everything, right? Mix them with Ritz crackers and salt, pepper.
Everything?
Everything,
Okay.
everything. Now, you think about it, you eat oysters like that.
I don't
clams.
ruin an oyster for me. I love an oyster.
Anyway, and she'd take butter, whatever, and pat them back in the shell and bake them like a clam thing. And they tasted pretty good.
Wow.
I never had any baked scallops anyway. So they tasted pretty good. But anyway, they were there the whole time I was there, and for both tours there.
Oh, wow.
And we always got along good. Now, some people at the station didn't care much for them because they said they were always needy or they wanted to do this, they wanted to ride back and forth, which we didn't care. I didn't care. So that was about it. Well, I advanced from a BM3 there. I made BM3 to BM1, and after Jack got killed, had a chief called Chief Morgan. Now, Morgan was also getting ready to retire, so he didn't care much about the station. He was a good man, but he didn't care much about the station. And I did. I was BM1. I was next in charge. I did all the paperwork. I would take it to Harker's Island, and he would sign it, and he'd go on his way. He'd review it. So that's things like commissary reports and search and rescue reports, and so forth. And after that, I was transferred to the Coast Guard McCullough out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Now, there was a lot of Harker's Island boys on that. And I stayed there for about a year. Guyan Willis at that time was transferred to the Coast Guard Cutter Verbena, which aids the navigation tour out of Fort Macon. And Guyan and I have been lifelong friends since we were in the Coast Guard. Guyan called me one day. I've been on McCullough probably a year, a little bit more than a year. He said, we need aids navigation person on this boat. Harlem Murphy was officer in charge of the Verbena, a warrant officer. I said, Guyan, I said, I love the job, but I don't know that I can get back there. Let me go back to the McCullough, because I know some of the people who have been stationed there. He talked to them.
Yeah, please.
McCullough was a weather ship, an old ex-Navy airplane tender, seaplane tender. In those days, the aircraft that were flying across the Atlantic were all propeller driven. So the government decided they were going to put weather stations out different places there. And they were 100 miles square, and each from 100 miles to 50 miles to 50 miles, and then out to 10 miles. We supposed to stay in the middle. And the reason for that, we were on the routes those planes traveled in case they ever had a ditch. Somebody would be there. Well, in the Atlantic, there was about 5 or 6 weather stations. Nobody ever had a ditch. Now, in the Pacific, they did. One plane did have a ditch. So it proved useful. But getting back now, Guyan called me. He says, Farmer, we'd like to have you on here if we can get you on here. And I said, well, I don't think they're going to let me off here. But Marlon Murphy, he'd been in the Coast Guard probably 150 years, it seemed like at the time. he was a very good man. He knew everybody in the district. So I got a transfer to the Verbena. And I stayed on there for a total about 4 years. Guyan was transferred. He was chief. He was chief. He was transferred to St. Paul Lorance Station in Alaska. I took his place as XPO, or next in charge. And after that, I was transferred. My next transfer was back to Cape Lookout as officer in charge.
Oh, wow.
Suited me fine. Suited me fine. And I decided when I got there, I was going to do things a little bit different. I was young, full of piss and vinegar, right? Truly. And I said, my first priority is these people to the station. Because and I'm not throwing off, so please don't misunderstand me. A lot of the chiefs that went there before me, I was one of the youngest chiefs, had been there. They were in the retirement mode. They were coasting. Now, Jack wasn't. Jack, he was close to retirement, wasn't. So I started a comprehensive training program for the crew. We did a lot of good things together. We did a lot of renovations of the stations. And the training program I started, for example, a bosun mate like your dad, when you get to be a BM2, the boats are secondary. You know how to run the boats. But if you're going to stay in the Coast Guard, you need to go to learn the administrative side of it. So I started teaching that, Morse code, and all things I knew they need to advance. And it was a very, very good program we had. A lot of things going on, a lot of people that were stationed there. And I'm sure I'll get part of these wrong. Sam Davis was there from Harker's Island. Paul Daniels, Anthony Nelson, James Lewis, which you just interviewed, Leland Yeomans, W.D. Henry, he was a first-class engineer there, and Robert Nelson, Herman Turnage, J.T. Hilo, and a variety of people, excuse me.
Wow.
But a lot of things went on there. There was a lot of heart attacks, not at the station. Every year in the fall of the year, as you probably know, off of Davis, a lot of surf fishermen come down. And there'd be heart attacks. We'd have to run down there, transport them back to the station, and a helicopter would come pick them up. Sometimes it was sea, sometimes it weren't. One of the things I need to mention, which I did mention at that time, reverting back to my first tour, And Guyan wanted me to mention this again about Sandy Malone.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was at the station. Guyan was at, and again, I'm reverting. So Guyan was down at the boats. And the lookout said, look, there's a plane just crashed on the runway. So Guyan came up, and I went down there. Guyan stayed at the station. And we got there, the plane was standing right on its nose. What he had done, he was practicing touch-and-go landings, and he stalled. Now, he was killed on impact.
Oh, my goodness.
But there was gasoline pouring all over him. And Guyan said the station told us that he was in contact with Fort Macon to leave it just like it was. Well, I couldn't do that.
Mm-mm. No.
I was afraid that the plane would catch on fire, and although he was already deceased, which it was evident that he burnt. So I climbed up on it, and it was a fabric plane. I took my knife, cut a hole in the fabric, and we put a line onto it, attached the power wagon, pulled it down, and took him out.
Yeah.
And again, the rest of it history.
Wow.
But during my time at the Cape Lookout, some of the things we did, we renovated the station, we renovated the keeper's quarters, we would boy in the tower. He'd watch him schools and fall here, the mullets going down the beach, right, black as they could be.
Pretty sight.
We'd run down there in a power wagon and throw treble hooks out to them and catch them and pull them on the side. It was more fun than anything else. I'm sure everybody's heard of Howard and Miss Alice and Tillboy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They come every year, and they didn't have a place to stay, so they stay in one of the old beat-down cabins over there. No windows in it, no doors, and so forth. And Howard, he came up to the station every day at lunchtime to play basketball with the boys. Now, Miss Alice would be down there with a solid bunch of young ones. They'd send Tillboy back to the island to get groceries. Well, sometimes it'd be a day or long before Tillboy ever showed back up. And we give them all the food that we could. The food was not a problem over there and so forth. But Howard Rose and Miss Alice and Tillboy, that was a thing to behold. One of the whiles I was there this tour, there was a bunch of pilot whales. We call them blackfish. They're about 20 feet long. And I'd say there's about 20 of them that came inside the hook and got stranded by the lighthouse. Now, I'm talking about on the inside now, not the ocean side. We were down there, and we called Piver's Island, and they sent some scientists over there for them. And we kept them wet for 2 days.
How? What did you do?
We put blankets on them, buckets of water and so forth, and we pick up the babies. You pick up the babies in their arms, and they would meow just like kittens.
No.
And we take them out in deep water, but they come right back ashore. We tow them off, and they come right back ashore. A lot of them died, but we did save some.
Wow.
And they said they had an inner ear infection and caused them to lose their bearings, and they just stranded herself.
Isn't nature amazing? That's amazing.
Now the babies naturally just followed wherever their mom went.
Yes.
They may or may not have an infection.
Yes. Wow. That's incredible.
And during this tour, the Coast Guard decided to renovate the lighthouse and remove the Fresnel lens. And I think this was in 75. That's a guess on the year, but close to 75. They took the Fresnel lens down. We helped them package it. And right now it's on display at the Coast Guard station in Portsmouth, Virginia. Should have never left here, but
that's a touchy subject with
should have never left here.
Yeah.
And they replaced it with what they call as an airport rotating beacon at the time. Had a piece of black plywood between it, had a beacon on one side, and it'd go round and round and round. Now I understand that's been replaced.
Yes. Yes, not the same.
One of the things I'm very proud of, during our district inspection now, and I think one of the people, maybe it's James Lewis touched onto it, the district would send about 2 officers come down about every 2 years to the various stations. They'd check the commissary reports, they check the armory reports, they check the personnel reports, they check the condition of the boats, condition of the station. They give the crews tests, they do everything in the world. We got a perfect score.
Oh, wow.
Very proud of it.
That's a big deal, yes.
Very proud.
That's something to be proud of.
Anyway.
That's a lot of little details taken care of, isn't it?
At the time, I'm sure the crewmen thought I was probably a little bit hard on my times. And I did get their attentions if they kind of screwed up or so forth. I did keep them some extra days over and so forth. And one of the people I kept over there, James Lewis, I mentioned Kevin to him.
He mentioned it. He said he deserved it, but he mentioned it.
Anthony Nelson.
I bet he deserved it.
Anthony Nelson. And
I
what we
love
did,
him.
we'd send the boat over in the afternoon to take the off-going crew off and go to Billy Best to pick up the gross whatever had. So we had 3 people. Now the coxswain of the boat, the one around the boat, and another person had to stay on the boat in case they got a search and rescue call. They could handle it with 2 people. The third person, the seaman, whatever, would go to Billy Best, pick up the groceries and the mail and so forth. So Anthony now he was a coxswain. He kept sneaking off. And of course the word got back to me. So I called him in the office. I said, now, Anthony or Nelson, I said, if I catch you doing that again, I'm going to get your attention. Well, I think about a week later, 2 weeks later, he was courting at the time too. He was courting it. He kind of snuck off. So the word got back to him, and I called him. I says, now I understand that you did it again. And he wanted to know how I found out, and I went down. I says, I'm going to tell you what. I said, I know you're courting, but this next week, you won't be doing no courting. I kept him there for a week on his liberty time.
Yeah, because they could go home every other
Every other day.
Other day,
We were on what we call port and starboard liberty, and you'd have every other afternoon off, every afternoon off, and every other weekend off. So you'd stay there all during the day and work and train and so forth. And that afternoon on the Liberty boat, which is about 4 o'clock, you'd go off, but you had to be back here the next morning, and the boat met you at 8 o'clock at Miss Harker's dock.
right.
Yeah.
And that was especially convenient because he was here from the island.
That's
and,
right.
Yeah.
That's right. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I love me some Anthony. Though.
I got his attention. but Anthony and I are really good friends and so forth. And I have a lot of experiences at Cape Lookout. A lot more than I can tell you in just a short period of time. But it was a good tour. And what your listeners need to remember is Cape Lookout was not a typical station. There was 2 isolated stations in the 5th Coast Guard District. That was Assateague, Virginia, and Cape Lookout.
And explain what you mean by isolated.
Okay. Everything that you did to Cape Lookout and Assateague, from the food you ate to the toilet paper you used, had to be brought by boat.
Wow.
We had a fuel barge. I think they mentioned the fuel barge. It held 1,200 gallons of diesel fuel and 300 gallons of gas. So we tow it over there. And in addition to the gasoline for the small boats and the diesel fuel for the boats and for run the generators at the station, we also carried back and forth 100-pound propane tanks for the cook stove and the galley. So everything that you could think went by either the fuel barge or a small boat. At the time I was there, the first time, we had a 36-footer, we had a 30-footer, we had the fuel barge, and we had an outboard motor. At one time, there was 2 30-footers there. And when I left there was 1 30-footer, an outboard, and the fuel barge.
That really is amazing, isn't it? To think that how
Everything.
self-sufficient it was.
Everything. When you went to Fort Macon or Swansboro, when you flipped on the light, Carolina Power and Light or Duke took care of it.
Yes.
But when you flipped on the light to Cape Lookout, you better hope the generators were doing their job.
Right.
And the generators powered the lighthouse also.
Wow.
Well, after my tour to Cape Lookout, let me see if I missed anything. Pardon me for this. I was advanced Chief Warrant Officer of W2, and I was sent to Nantucket Lightship. That was a very unique experience.
Wow. Yes.
I was on the lightship at one time. We had the storm of the century. This was probably in 1977, 78. And with all 4 engines on the line, on running, pushing us forward, and 2 anchors down, one was 6,000-pound anchor, and another was 2,400-pound anchor, I got blown 12 miles backwards.
You are kidding.
12 miles backwards.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is, that's unique. That's unique.
Now, was there ever a time then that you were a little bit scared?
All the time.
Yes, that had to be terrifying.
When I say scared, I was a captain, so I tried not to let it show. But let's just say we're all heavily concerned.
Yes, yeah, maybe that's the better way.
That's
Yes.
better.
But you had everyone that you were responsible for.
That's right. There was probably about 14 people on the lightship at that time. And the 378 in Morgenthau was coming out of New York. Now, the Nantucket is halfway between, if you will, between Boston and New York. The Morgenthau was coming out of New York, heading to Boston. And we had lost communications. We hadn't had communications with anybody for probably almost a day, 12 hours to a day. And they told the Morgenthau to try to find us. And they did find us. And I was on the short radio, the FM radio with the captain of the Morgenthau, and he and I were talking, and he got within probably about 3 miles of me. And he says, "What can I do for you?" He says, "There's nothing you do for me." And he said, I'll stand by you." I said, "No." He said, "I can't turn around." He said, I can't turn around because it's too rough." He said, "I'll stand by you." I said, "No, just go on to Boston and I'll see him." He said, "I'll buy you a beer in Boston." So probably about a month or 2 months later, when I did see him, he bought me the beer.
That was hard for him to leave you there.
It was a unique experience. Okay.
How strong were the winds, like in the tides? How extreme?
It was over. We had an anemometer on top of the light, and this lightship, Nantucket, was the last Coast Guard ever built. It had what they call a tripod mast, and on the top of the tripod mast, come up like this, there was a big light. On top of that big light, which was our main light, was a secondary light in case the big light failed. We had an anemometer up there, and that blew off over 100 miles an hour. And it broke off the secondary light, hit the top of the cabin, and we didn't know what it was. A big explosion during the middle of the night. And after we could get out on deck, probably 36 hours, we found out what it was. It was a rough time.
Oh my goodness. I think of how isolated you feel when you're in your house, because it seems like the strong winds of a hurricane will always come at night. When you're in your safety of your walls on land, in your house, hearing the rocking and the noises, I can't imagine being in that situation.
We weathered though, and weren't looking back at it. I still don't know how bad it was, but we got through it.
Wow.
Well, after the lightship, I had the worst tour of my whole Coast Guard career. Looks like it would have been the best, but it was one of the worst ones I ever had.
Where was it?
Cape Hatteras.
Really? Really?
Cape Hatteras. I was the XO of the group. We had myself and a lieutenant. Wonderful people. We had in our control, we had Station Coin Jock, Oregon Inlet Station, Coast Guard Cutter Point Brown, Agents Navigation Team Oregon Inlet. The group had Buxton, Hatteras Inlet Station. We had the Coast Guard Cutter Chokeberry. We had Ocracoke Station. When I say it's the worst tour, there weren't enough people there, myself and the CO, to do justice to the job. We had all those units. And remember, you had to check every one of them. And if you can imagine the distance between Oak Island and Cape Lookout or Hoboken, it was even worse than that.
Wow.
We'd have to drive. We had the Coast Guard Auxiliary we had to take care of. We had the Coast Guard Reserve we had to take care of. It could have been a great job if they'd had at least 4 officers there. But it was a 24/7 job.
Now, what was the reason for not having enough people? Were they...
Now, excuse me, we had enough enlisted people to do their work. Station Oregon Inlet did a great job doing their work. OCO did a great job, and all the rest of the units did. But as a CO and XO, you had to go around to these stations to make sure they did their job and make sure that their quote-unquote paperwork was up. And, of course, you always have personnel problems and so forth.
Yeah.
Again, the problem was a job. There weren't enough people as far as the officer corps or chief corps to do it justice.
And that's such a shame.
It is. It was a shame.
Wow.
And nowadays, that same unit, right, has probably got 6 or 8 officers there.
Makes a big difference.
Big difference. Big difference.
That's a shame.
Well, after Cape Hatteras, I was transferred to the Coast Guard Cutter Primrose as CO captain of her, and that was at Fort Macon. And very, very good job. We had the distinction. We had the most time underway. We serviced the most aids as the aids navigation, beacons, and so forth. We won a lot of accolades there. We won a lot of rewards there and so forth. But it was really, really a good job. But a lot under wait time. Well, after Primrose, I was transferred to the 5th Coast Guard District as a small boat officer. I was in charge of buying all the small boats, outboards, inboard outboards, that type of thing, that the Coast Guard and the 5th District needed, including support equipment for those boats, boat trailers, etc., equipment, and so forth. And that was a good job. That was really a good job. You're on the road a lot. You'd have to go to these different boat manufacturers and check on the things that you ordered. I tried to buy in North Carolina if I could. Seahawks boats, long trailers, and so forth. They were all in government contracts. It was all above board. And it really is a good job. A lot of travel. I relieved on that district job a man by the name of Ernie Styron. Ernie was Cape Hatteras. And he says, Farmer, you're going to be traveling so much, you're going to wake up in the morning in a motel room and not know where you're at. Now, Ernie was getting ready to retire.
Wow.
I said, Ernie, that ain't going to happen.
That sounded ridiculous, didn't it?
Happen. Guess what? It happened. It happened. Because you had to travel between Lower New York and the South Carolina line. Every Coast Guard unit.
That's a long stretch.
Boats. I don't care what it was, the lighthouses or so forth. So did a lot of traveling. Good job, a lot of traveling. And then I was traveling to the Kennebec. That's Coast Guard Cutter Kennebec. It was a CEO out of Portsmouth, Virginia. That was also a construction buoy tender. That was a fairly good job. And after the Kennebec, I was transferred to Alaska, the 17th Coast Guard District. One of the best jobs I ever had.
Were you excited about going to Alaska?
Not exactly.
Because that would not be on my list.
Not my first choice.
Yes.
But it turned out to be, I had a great boss there, and it was also a lot of traveling. I may be in my quarters was in Ketchikan. I was a district aids navigation officer. I had 6 180-foot buoy tenders. I had an aids navigation team. I had a 65-foot small buoy tender, and all the equipment that support those. And I was in charge of all that, and I'd make sure they did their jobs. Now the buoy tenders, they were on their own. They sort of did their job. They didn't need to oversee them. But I had to make sure that they had the equipment that they needed to work. That's beacons, buoys, sinkers, chains, so forth. And I would verify what they did at times. Very good job. I may be out in the Lucian Chain one week. I may be in Nome, Alaska the next week. Fairbanks the following week.
Gracious.
Always a lot of road travel, but again, a great job. Great job. And then after that, I was transferred to the Coast Guard headquarters. I spent 30 years, and that's where I retired.
Oh my goodness.
That was the end of my Coast Guard career.
That sounds like a wonderful career.
It was a great career.
What would you say to anyone listening who is on the fence about going into the service, and especially maybe the Coast Guard?
Well, I think one of your people that you interviewed said that everybody should go into service. I totally agree. It won't hurt anybody, boy or girl, at a young age to go in the service. It teaches them to be on their own. Mama don't make the bed no more. And guess what? You're not the boss anymore. You get up when I tell you to get up, you eat what I tell you to eat, and you do what I tell you to do. And that brings humility to a lot of people, but it gets a lot of people where they open their eyes. And I think it's a great thing.
Yes.
So I do.
I agree. Well, time has gone way too fast. Maybe will you come back again sometime?
I'd be glad to.
We can talk some more.
I'd
I would
be glad
love to. Well, thank you again for coming. And I look forward to having some more conversations with you.
Be glad to.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. Tune in next week as we continue learning, sharing, and remembering together. If you'd like to hear more, check out our previous episodes where you get your podcasts. If you or someone you know is interested in being on The Landing, please reach out through the link in the description. Until then, stay safe and be kind.